is the cleanest of clean finishers from the best on the planet.
It's time for the biggest sports stories.
Liverpool, the champions of Europe, are top of the world.
The biggest interviews.
That such a great spectacle is ruined by such thuggish behavior.
And all the analysis right here.
He's the one player that has the arrogance to think that he can play in any stadium in the world and any pitch in the world in front of any player in the world and take them on.
Every weekday, it's my sport, it's your sport. It's ZiFM Sport. Let's join the team for the biggest show in the world of sport on ZiFM Stereo. My station, your station.
It's a very good evening and welcome to our shortened version of ZiFM Sport. It's a Thursday evening, so we go short, sharp and sweet, diving into the world of sport, local or international, to pick out a big sports star who you can hear from. And this evening, we've got the privilege of hearing from the legendary, the iconic Australian bowler Shane Warne, who was voted as one of the top 5 cricketers of the last century, alongside the likes of Sir Donald Bradman and Sachin Tendulkar. So it's going to be a fascinating story that we get to hear from Shane Warne as he's in conversation with the Sky Sports cricket punditry team led by Nasser Hussain. Shane Warne, of course, has since retired, but he works as a cricket pundit for the different TV companies around the world in his homeland, Australia, as well as, of course, notably with Sky in England. So you want to stay logged on to ZiFM Sport as we prepare to hear from the man who took over 700 test wickets in his career, and a man I rate as the best spin bowler that we've ever seen.
Hi, my name is Sean Williams, Zimbabwe cricket captain. You're listening to ZiFM Sport.
Z.
My name is Mike Madoda, and of course I'm riding solo this evening. Now, Shane Warne, where do I start when I start trying to tell the story of Shane Warne? I mean, it was a fantastic career, a colourful career, a lot of controversies, but littered with big performances. Now, I want to qualify a statement I made. I said I rate him as arguably the greatest spin bowler of all time. And there are people out there who are thinking to themselves, you know what, hang on, Mutia Mullaritharan took more wickets than Shane Warne. But here's the thing, Mullaritharan was a big performer and a great wicket taker, and he did it mostly in favourable conditions, playing in Sri Lanka, playing on the subcontinent. Shane Warne, on the other hand, he did it on different surfaces in different countries. He took wickets in Australia. He took wickets in South Africa. He went to England and he took wickets. Who can forget that ball that he bowled to Mike Gatting? That was the delivery that announced Shane Warne to the world that, hang on, we didn't just have an ordinary spin bowler here. We are going to be witnessing someone who's going to be taking the art and craft of spin bowling by the scruff of the neck. And that is exactly what Shane Warne was able to do, and of course he was at the forefront of a number of Australia's World Cup victories, chased away from the 2003 edition in South Africa because of a failed drugs test. Those are some of the controversies I'm talking about, but there is no doubt that he is one of the iconic performers in the world of cricket. And of course, one of the things that I loved about Shane Warne was that he was also an astute thinker of the game. He was a leader, and this was in an era where Australia had so many great leaders. Shane Warne, Steve Waugh was, of course, the captain that he played quite a bit of cricket under, but he made his test debut under Alan Border. So from Alan Border to Steve Waugh, from Steve Waugh to Ricky Ponting, he was playing in a team with really great leaders. But he was always up there, always vocal, always willing to help in the burden of leading the team. And not just that, he was leading with his performances, because Shane Warne was a genuine match winner. So I absolutely loved him, and of course we'll remember the images of Shane Warne with the sunscreen on his face, made him look like, one of those Tomahawk Indians in a cowboy movie out of the United States of America. And listen, he certainly was one of the cowboys of world cricket. a genuine action hero and a hero to many Australian kids, and someone who inspired a generation. There are very few cricketers out there who can say that they inspired generations, but I'll tell you that there are a few who have done that. You have to, of course, look at Sachin Tendulkar, the effect and impact he had in India and the world over. Shane Warne is the other cricket. Absolutely fantastic. And then, of course, you have to take a look at Sir Viv Richards and what he did in the West Indies. Those three cricketers for me in this present generation, cricketers who have played the sport in the last 40 years, those are the big standout influences. And of course, right here on ZiFM Sport, it's a tremendous privilege for us to be able to present Shane Warne to you. And one of the things he was talking about with Nasser Hussain and the team at Sky Sports is, of course, the players that he thought were the most outstanding performers for Australia in their contest versus England. He even chooses his top 11 cricketers, his team of Australians that he thought were the biggest performers when it came to the Ashes and contest versus England. Let's hear from the Wizard of Oz, Shane Warne.
Well, I'm a bit like everybody else, just doing the right things, staying at home, not socialising, not doing anything like that. Lockdown. We're all a bit scared, aren't we? It's all pretty unsettling. It's crazy times for everyone, and everyone's affected, and we just hope everyone stays healthy and safe and safe. All the workers that are doing such a great cause in the front line in the hospitals and the doctors and the nurses, well done to you guys. You guys are awesome. So thank you. But let's hope all our loved ones and that are safe. I live with my son. My two girls live with their mum, and then they come over and stay and everything as well. But at the moment they're with their mum, and my son's with me. So I've been doing boy stuff. We've been playing poker downstairs. We've been watching movies, golf simulator, practicing golf. He doesn't really play, but we've been doing that. It's been good. Just been hanging. It's been quite nice actually to just hang for a while, but I'm not sure I could do this for another 3 or 4 months.
Can I go back to one of the teams you've picked as well? Because I want to swap to the Australian side, the best 11 you played with. So you've gone with...
Did you see my Ashes team too? You see the Ashes?
Yeah, we'll come on to the combined one. Come on to that. Excuse me, I'm just going to cough. I'm going to go with your Shane Warne's best 11 he played with. You went Matthew Hayden, Michael Slater, Ricky Ponting at 3, Mark Waugh at 4, Border at 5 and captain, then Steve Waugh, Gilchrist the keeper, Tim May, Jason Gillespie, Big Bruce Reid, who you met on your debut, and your mate Glenn McGrath, with Merv Hughes as 12th man. So let's go from the top. Why Hayden and Slater? You could have thrown Justin Langer in there. You haven't got your mate David Boone in there. What's your thinking with the top two?
Langer was very, very good. Matthew Elliott was another player I considered. He was very, very good. I mean, if it wasn't for his knees, he would have made a lot of test runs. David Boone was another fantastic player. Hayden, I think, he bullied bowlers. I think the way he played, he was a fantastic batsman. I think he was destructive against pace and spin by the end of his career. And I thought Michael Slater was ahead of his time. I think he intimidated bowlers right from ball one. I think bowlers worried about him. Rather than there's a lot of batsmen that worry about bowlers. But I think a lot of bowlers worried about Michael Slater. Where am I going to bowl to him? Because if I get it wrong, he'll hurt me. And I thought Hayden Slater was a fantastic combination, left, right-hander. And I saw what he did, Slats. I thought he was a terrific player, Slats. So I thought that was why I went with Hayden Slater at the top.
Just like Matthew Elliott, I mean, I thought he was a fantastic player. You just mentioned it there. But without the knee injuries, he could have been anything. Was he one of the best players you've ever seen a fast bowling?
Yeah. I remember Joe Hannes. We used to go to the Wacker, the old Wacker in the 90s, in the early 90s, and Joe Angel and a few big quick bowlers in Perth. And he used to open the batting with a floppy hat on because he knew they'd bowl short to him. He wanted them to bowl short. And he hooked, I reckon, one of the best shots I've ever seen was the Wanderers with Alan Donald steaming in, bowling proper quick. And Matty Elliott hitting it in front of square up onto that grass bank hill in front of the change rooms. Yeah. Just straight, like flat, just went smack. I mean, he was as good a player as the quickies and the short pitch bowling. I'd say short pitch bowling as I saw. He was right up there.
Another player played the short pitch bowling well. You got at number 3. There wasn't really much debate who was going to bat 3.
No, it was... both from Tassie, Booney or Ponting, the 5'2" Tasmanian with the flared pants. David Boone didn't quite make it. The keg on legs. But Punter's world class, and he's a world class player, Punt. So yeah, put him in at number 3.
Then Mark Waugh at 4.
Mark Waugh, Nas played lots with Mark Waugh, and he was probably one of the best batsmen to watch. He was elegant. He had all the shots. He made it look ridiculously easy. But he'd play reverse sweeps, second ball when he's never practiced one. He'd do silly stuff. He'd have lapses of concentration. But that was the beauty of Mark Waugh also. He was one of the best players of spin, and he was just a terrific player and a great team man too. Very, very funny guy without trying to be funny. One of my favourite cricketers I played with. He was just a great player. Very, very good player.
Is it true as well that whenever he was out, it was never his fault? Even if he got bowled or something like that, or even if he got like a big 100, he blamed the bat or something for why he didn't get more?
Absolutely. He made 170 or 180 open batting at the MCG on big boundaries in the mid-90s in a one-day game. Came in and said, that's worth 250. I've had a proper bat. I'm taking this bat back tomorrow. I would have got 250. It's true.
I agree with everything Shane said there about Mark Waugh. He was a phenomenal talent and a little bit pigeonholed. People have him as not lazy, but sort of Gower-esque. I played with Mark a lot, Essex. Mark trained, Mark practiced. He might not practice the way some do, but he was very, very professional about his game. Some of the innings him and Gooch played for Essex were truly remarkable. In the days that sides had to declare to set up a game, we went through a phase at Essex that no one would declare against us, not because of Nasser Hussain at number 5, was because Gooch and Waugh would knock off any score.
I put on YouTube your first test match. Yeah. And I can't believe, and people should look at this, the difference of you then and then when you went and did the Gatting ball, which wasn't that far apart, the difference in a bowler between your first test match and then when you started that Ashes series against Gooch. You were like a completely different bowler. Is that fair?
I think I'd only played 2 or 3 first-class games.
Right.
I stand to be corrected. It might have been 4. I played, I think, 2 for Victoria, and I might have played 2 on an Australia A tour to Zimbabwe, I think. So maybe 4, but I could be 3. So I'd really only started. I went from, in 1988, I'd finished playing football, and I got a letter saying your services are no longer required in football. 89, I went to play league cricket in England, and I came back from there. So 89, 90, summer in Australia, I made the state squad in first grade cricket. 18 months later, or 12 months later, I was playing for Australia.
Really? So you went from
grade to first
cricket?
grade. Yes.
It's about
third grade,
under 2 years.
Third grade, first grade, couple of Shield games, picked for Australia. So I'd hardly played any club games, let alone playing for Australia. So once I played Test cricket, I didn't even know the team. I had to introduce myself to Jeff Marsh and Bruce Reid. I remember remember the old cricket coffins? I sat there with Bruce Reid. And I said, g'day, Bruce, Shane Warne. He goes, nice to meet you, mate. Oh, yeah, yep, g'day. Next one, Jeff Marsh came in. G'day, Jeff. Shane Warne. Yeah, g'day, mate. So I didn't know half the team. I knew Merv and Dino, a couple of Vicks and Alan Border, but the rest I didn't know. Yeah. So I was introducing myself there. I played no cricket. I was that nervous. I'm playing against Vensaka, Shastri, Kapil Dev, all these Indian greats that just smashed. Sachin, I think, was 10 or maybe 12 at that time. He still got 100. Mandrake, Sanjay, who else was in that team? Manaj Prabhakar.
Azharuddin.
Sidhu, Azharuddin. So they've said some pretty decent players, and I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to set a field. I didn't know how to get a wicket. I just bowled the ball. I haven't bowled a wrong one for a couple of overs. I'll try one of them, or too scared to try and bowl a flipper. So just super nervous. And then, what was that, January 92, summer of 91, 92. And then that next year was where it sort of started to get good for me. I worked my butt off. I bowled for 3-4 hours a day.
What, in the nets or just?
Yeah, and the Nets just put a ball down in the nets and just bowled and bowled and bowled. Then I went to the academy with Rod Marsh and Terry Jenner, and me and TJ bowled for 2 or 3 hours a day, just trying to understand how to get batsmen out and talking about you don't just release a bowl, how to set a batsman up for a wicket, what plans can you come up with to guys that are sweeping you or using your feet or play off the back foot, front foot. So learning the art of leg spin rather than just spinning a leg break as far as you can. And over that year, I've got plenty of weaknesses, but one of my strengths, I was quite a quick learner. And I learned pretty quickly how to do that. We then went to Sri Lanka in 92, got pummeled again. But it was the second innings of that test match. They needed 11 to win Sri Lanka. And Alan Border threw me the ball after I think I had none for 100 in the first innings and none for 11 off 1 over from the second innings. And I took 3 for none. And we won the test. And that made me feel like I belonged. But it was only like 9, 10, 11. That made me feel like I belonged. So suddenly I had this little bit of confidence that I've contributed. I wasn't just a liability. Then the West Indies in Australia, 92, 93, and that I took 7 for 50 against the West Indies on Boxing Day, and that was the day I thought, you know what, I'm playing against the West Indies, all these guys, Haynes, Lara, all those guys, and that was the moment I thought, if I bowl like this, I am good enough. So that moment in anyone's life, in anyone's career, when you know that your best is good enough for that level and you're not trying to prove anything to anyone that you are, that's when the magic happens, and that's when anything can happen, and that's when you perform. And then it's up to you about your attitude. And there's a lot of other things that come into it, but when you know you're good enough, that's when you can play, and that's when you can start to compete. So by the time I got to England in 93, I did pretty well against the West Indies, hammered the Kiwis. Come to England, I was ready to go. So I felt pretty good by the time I got there. So the case of 18 months. So is my kid's going to run out, this is your life in a minute? Or? No. It was sort of, you asked how it worked. That was all it really was just a little bit of confidence to experiment. When you're not confident, I didn't want to bowl anything bar a leg break, basically. I was too scared. What happens if I bowl a wrong and it bounces twice, or a flipper that's a full toss? So once you have that confidence, you're a bit more prepared to experiment, take a risk. Same with batting. When you first get in, you just don't want to get out. You don't want to get out. And then once you get to a stage where you've made a few runs and you've got some runs on the board, you've made 100, or you've made some contributions, then you start to maybe step out to the spinner. You might take a risk of whacking or take on the quicks rather than just try to survive.
You always struck me as well, and playing against you, that you would never, ever give up as well. Some players you play against, you know you've got them better. Is there ever a time where you just felt, after the start and you found your game, where you thought, I'm beat here, this bloke's just too good for me?
There's a few times. I mean, every single player has a day out, and I don't think there was ever a stage where I ever stood at the top of my mark and think I can't get this bloke out. I was always a believer that you're only as good as your next ball. You're only as good as the next game, not the game that just went, or you're only as good as your last game. I never believed that, because the next ball you bowl could be your best. The next shot you play, the next catch could be your best. So no matter how much I was getting spanked around by Shastri or Sidhu or Nasser or whoever, I always stood at the top of my mark thinking, okay, I'll get him out this ball. And I never ever gave up. And on that day, they were too good, so be it.
What about Carl Hooper? Tell the story about Carl Hooper when he kept running at you and you couldn't quite work him out.
Yeah, sometimes when batsmen run down and hit you for 6 or 4 or use their feet against you, you get a sense of when they're coming, or they go too early so you can adapt. But the first time I really struggled for a period of time, not just a ball or two, was against Carl Hooper, and I didn't know when he was coming down the wicket. So it's a bit like I was hesitating in my actions. So, is he coming? And I was dropping it short and full, and it was starting to irritate me because I couldn't work it out. And we went to lunch after, 3 or 4 overs of this happening, and I was absolutely steaming. I was like, I don't know when he's coming down. Like, it's annoying me. So I remember having a chat with Bob Simpson, and he said, well, he must be giving you some sort of message, or must be giving a tell about when he's going to come down. And I said, well, I can't see anything. I've watched him. He said, watch closer. I said, I've watched his body, I've watched his feet, I've watched his back, I've watched everything. I can't pick it up. He goes, watch his body. He's going to be nervous to run down at you, so just watch carefully. I said, okay, I'll try. So I did the old come out after lunch to bowl and pretend to bowl a ball and, front foot got stuck in the front line, all that rubbish, just watching Carl Hooper the whole time. So another couple of overs go past of doing that, not bowling the ball, coming through my action, sorry, all that sort of rubbish. and then he ran down and hit one, and there was something, but I didn't know what it was. There was something different about his body language and everything, but I still didn't know what it was. Another couple of overs go past, same thing. He runs down again, and I picked it up. What he did, when he was going to bat normally and not run down, he would bat like this, look down, bat, and then play. When he was going to run at me, he'd tap the bat and stare at me the whole time, and then he would run. So over the course of, I don't know, maybe an hour or what it was in the game, I worked it out that when he was going to run at me, he just stared at me the whole time. And when he wasn't, when he was just going to play normally, he looked down and looked up again. So that was, a really good learning curve for me then to do that sort of stuff.
And it's like poker,
just another one on
that. He's got a tell almost. You're looking for his tell.
Yeah. So I was watching him. So, it's easy just to deliver a ball, but if you're starting to worry about what the batsman's doing, it can affect your bowling. So you can't worry about what the batsman's doing. But if you can pick up on what batsmen giving a tell to you about that sort of stuff, the same way bowlers do. I remember Greg Chappell, Abdul Qadir was out in Australia, and Australia picked, I think, 6 left-handers against him because the right-handers couldn't pick his wrong, and he'd show you one and then shouldn't bowl the other. But Greg Chappell had no issue with it. And everyone said, Greg, what is it? And he wouldn't tell them. In the end, he told them. He said what he does when he's about to bowl the wrong and that no one can pick and everyone struggles against, he's got a huge smile on his face. That's true. So Kadir would come in, he'd be giving you this one. Oh, here we go, mate. He'll just got a smile on his face. He's about to bowl this wrong and that you can't pick. So, look, there's all sorts of tells and they're important to pick up.
So just be clear, when you picked up that towel with Hooper, for a youngster out there, if someone's running at you, what did you do? Bowl it slower, bowl it wider? What was the key? Whenever
the key was to bowl slower, too many spinners out there these days think the faster I bowl and the straighter I bowl, if they miss, I hit, is the key. That's actually easier for the batsman. And it's harder for you because you've got no margin for error. If you're a little bit short, a little bit full, it's a lot easier for the batsman to bash you wherever they want now with the reverse and all that sort of stuff that they do. Slower, making the batsman change the pace, make the pace, is the easier thing to do. And you can't bowl that slower one at the same line as you're bowling your normal stock delivery because the batsman can line you up because he's used to it where it's coming all the time. So the key is when you bowl it slower, you must bowl it wider because, whether that's just outside leg stump for a top edge sweep or whether it's outside off stump, whichever way, you can't bowl it in his arc and where you've been bowling all your other deliveries too. You got to bowl it slower and wider, change your pace, make him make all the pace. That's the key.
Steve Smith has just served his 2-year suspension from leading Australia. Do you think he could captain Australia again?
Oh, I'm sure he could. If I was selected, I wouldn't though.
Why?
I'd like Steve Smith. Well, I just want him to bat. Don't want him to worry about the other stuff. I just want him to bat and bat and bat. I think he's a leader on the field anyway. I don't think he needs to be captain. I wouldn't make him captain. I'd keep Tim Payne captain. As long as Tim Payne's making runs,
sure,
I'd keep him as captain. If Tim Payne, it's a different situation. If Tim Payne doesn't make runs and is out of the side, then Smith comes back into calculations. But when everyone says there's no one else, it's amazing who puts their hand up and you suddenly think, hang on, there might be. Well, will it be Travis Head? Will he come? We know how good a player he can be. Finds a way to get out all the time, around 40, 50, does all the hard work, but does a great job captaining South Australia. So could he do it? Why couldn't Pat Cummins do it as a bowler? I don't know. I think there'll be other candidates by the time Tim Payne decides to finish, and hopefully he has the opportunity to finish, and he will do that if he's making runs.
Z. Oh, a really fascinating interview there of Shane Warne. Keen insights from such a keen cricket mind. Shane Warne, the Wizard of Oz. Absolutely fantastic. And he spun many a batsman into a daze, picking up wicket after wicket, and in tandem with Glenn McGrath and the likes of Jason Gillespie and Michael Kraspovich, they formed the most lethal bowling attack that we have ever seen in the world. And throw in a young Brett Lee as well to boot. I mean, fantastic bowler. And I love the fact that he also went on to talk about one of the stories that's been grabbing the headlines in Australia, that is the captaincy conundrum that is facing selectors in Australia. Steve Smith, who after that Cape Town debacle, Sandpapergate, was given a 2-year ban from any leadership role. David Warner was banned for life from occupying any leadership role in the Australian cricket setup. But Steve Smith's ban has now come to an end. And so there's been a lot of conversation that, hey, shouldn't the former captain step into the breach once again? He's been reformed, he's been re-educated, he's a big performer, leads from the front with the bat. But I love Shane Warne's thinking in that, you know what, I'd rather let Steve Smith concentrate on his batting. Not that he needs to, because he's the world's best batsman right now. When it comes to Test cricket, better than Virat Kohli, and that takes some doing. And I'd love to see him just carry on in that. He can contribute to the team. We've seen past Australian teams, they had plenty of leaders. So when Ricky Ponting was leading the team or Steve Waugh was leading the team, it just wasn't them. There was Mark Waugh who was standing in the slips, Shane Warne who was standing in the slips. You had the likes of Matty Hayden, Adam Gilchrist as well. Those were leaders, guys who were able to lead. So I feel Steve Smith can still share the leadership burden from a senior player perspective. The guy who's there right now when it comes to the Test cricket job has done an absolutely phenomenal job. Oh man, Tim Payne. A lot of people didn't rate him as a leader. We all thought, nice bloke. He looks like a nice guy. Not exactly Australian, because we always have this stereotypical Australian. He's gruff. He's a bit rough around the edges. He's a bit coarse. And so forth. And Tim Payne was a nice guy. And he's really come through, the way that he was able to lead the Australian transition from Sandpapergate to them winning the Ashes or retaining the Ashes, and of course them performing way above expectation at last year's Cricket World Cup, where they lost to England in that semi-final. But some of the performances they put on in that tournament, they belied their ranking, and so they were absolutely fantastic. So for me, I think Tim Payne should keep the job. He's the Test captain, keep him in the job. And I think Aaron Finch as well has done fantastically well as the one-day international captain. There's no need to change it for the time being. Let Australia move forward with Finch as the ODI captain, Tim Payne as the Test captain, and Steve Smith as the senior player.